I need to share with you something that honestly made me question everything I thought I knew about churches. And trust me, I've researched hundreds of sacred places around the world, but this one is different in a way that will stay with you forever. Kutna Hora, Czech Republic. Just 1 hour from Prague. There's a small gothic chapel that looks absolutely ordinary from the outside. Nothing special. Just another old church in a quiet cemetery. But when you descend those stairs into the underground chapel, you realize you've entered something that shouldn't exist. Because every decoration you see, the chandelier, the coat of arms, the wall ornaments, the chalices, everything is made from human bones. Not replicas, not sculptures. Real human skeletons. Between 40,000 and 70,000 people. And here's what kept me awake at night. These bones were arranged by a half-blind monk who supposedly regained his vision after completing the work. Then, centuries later, a woodcarver was hired to organize the bones and instead created the most beautiful, yet haunting artwork humanity has ever seen. But the question nobody asks is, why? Why would anyone do this? Why would the church allow it? And what happened to the people who created it? When you discover the truth behind the Sedlec Ossuary, you'll understand that sometimes the line between sacred and unusual isn't just blurred. It disappears completely. Before we dive into this story, if you appreciate narratives that challenge everything you believe about mortality, art, and faith, stay here with me. Subscribe to the channel because every week I bring you a different church, a different mystery that most people will never discover. And I guarantee, after this story, you'll never see mortality the same way again. Now let's go back to 1278, to a simple monk who brought back something from Jerusalem, something that would change everything. Imagine the year 1278, the Middle Ages in full force. Bohemia, what we now call the Czech Republic, is experiencing prosperity under King Otakar II. In the small town of Sedlec, there's a Cistercian monastery. Nothing extraordinary, understand? Just monks living their austere lives, farming the land, praying 8 times a day. But King Otakar II has an idea. He wants to strengthen ties with the Holy Land, so he sends Abbot Henry, the head of this monastery, on a diplomatic mission to Jerusalem. Abbot Henry travels for months, dangerous roads, harsh conditions. But he finally arrives at the holiest place in Christianity, Golgotha, the exact spot where Jesus was crucified. And here's where everything changes. Henry does something that seems simple but would have consequences for centuries. He fills a small jar with earth from Golgotha, holy soil, earth blessed by Christ's sacrifice. When he returns to Sedlec, he scatters this sacred earth over the monastery cemetery. Now, pause here and think about what this means for medieval people. This isn't just dirt. This is literally a piece of the Holy Land, a fragment of where salvation itself happened. Word spreads like wildfire across Central Europe. The cemetery at Sedlec has soil from Golgotha. If you're buried there, you're buried in the Holy Land itself, and suddenly everyone wants to be buried in Sedlec, not just locals. Wealthy nobles from across Bohemia, Austria, Poland. People traveling for days just to secure a burial plot. The cemetery becomes one of the most desirable resting places in all of Europe. But here's what nobody anticipated. Tragedy doesn't wait for convenience. The Black Death arrives in Central Europe. In Sedlec alone, 30,000 people pass away. 30,000. In a single year, bodies are buried in mass graves. The cemetery expands rapidly, but there's only so much space. Then, early 1400s, the Hussite Wars explode across Bohemia. Religious conflict. Catholics versus Reformers. Brutal, unforgiving warfare. Another 10,000 deceased are buried in Sedlec. By now, the cemetery is overflowing, graves upon graves, bodies in multiple layers. Around 1400, a Gothic church is built in the center of the cemetery. 2 levels. The upper chapel for worship, the lower chapel for something else. An ossuary. A bone repository. Because they had a problem. They needed space for new burials. But these were still human remains. Still souls who paid to rest in holy ground. You couldn't simply discard them. So they made a decision that would echo through centuries. In 1511, they gave a task to a monk. Not just any monk. According to legend, a half-blind monk. His job? Exhume the bones. Stack them in the lower chapel.
Make room for the newly deceased, can you imagine?
Being partially blind, descending into that underground chamber day after day, carrying remains, building pyramids of skeletal elements. Some say he stacked them for years. Some say he struggled with the darkness. Others say something miraculous happened. The legend claims that when he finished his work, when the last bone was placed, his vision returned. Completely. Was it a miracle? Or did the dedication to that sacred task somehow transform him? We'll never know his name. We'll never know if the story is true. But what we do know is this. He left behind 4 massive pyramids of bones, perfectly arranged, mathematically precise. And then the church was abandoned. For over 300 years, those bones remained there, in darkness, in silence, waiting. Now let's fast forward to 1870. The church and its cemetery have been acquired by the Schwarzenberg family, one of the most powerful noble houses in Bohemia. And they've got a bit of a situation. The ossuary is a mess. Bones are just piled up everywhere. Tourists are starting to visit, and it's all becoming a bit undignified. So they hire a local wood carver named František Rindt. He's 35 years old from a small town called Kostnice. His instructions are simple. Organize the bones. That's it. Just make it neat, make it presentable. But František Rindt was not a simple man. When he descended into that underground chapel and saw those tens of thousands of bones, he didn't just see a problem to be solved. He saw a canvas. He spent years down there. Can you even imagine that? Years in an underground chamber surrounded by the remains of 40,000 souls who had passed. First, he bleached every single bone, one by one, to give them a uniform, clean appearance. And then he started creating. What he created was something that had never existed before. Something that still challenges belief to this day. Let me try to describe what you see when you enter the Sedlec Ossuary today. You descend a flight of stairs. It gets darker, cooler. You can feel a tangible shift in the atmosphere. The first thing that catches your eye are the garlands. Festive-looking chains hanging from every archway. Except these decorations have empty eye sockets looking right back at you. In the 4 corners of the chapel, there are massive bell-shaped pyramids of bones. They stand 3 meters high, each one now protected behind a barrier. Each pyramid contains thousands of skeletons, all stacked with breathtaking geometric precision. Then you notice the chalices. Enormous cups made entirely of shoulder blades and pelvic bones. They flank the altar as if ready for some solemn, otherworldly ceremony. But then you look up, and you see the chandelier. Oh, the chandelier! Hanging from the very center of the nave is a chandelier constructed entirely from human bones. And not just any bones. According to the records, it contains at least one of every single bone in the human body. Femurs form its main structure. Vertebrae are fashioned into delicate chains. Skulls are positioned as decorative elements, and tiny finger bones spell out intricate patterns. It is, all at once, the most beautiful and the most unsettling thing you will ever see. But František Rindt wasn't finished. On the left wall, there's a coat of arms. It's the Schwarzenberg family crest, an enormous heraldic design depicting a raven and other historical imagery. And yes, it's made completely of bones. The detail is absolutely stunning. The raven's form is made from carefully arranged bones, with every single element placed with incredible precision. And in case you're wondering if Rindt was proud of his work, he signed it. Near the entrance, spelled out in what appear to be finger bones, are the words František Rindt Eska Skalas, 1870. He literally signed his masterpiece in human remains? Now, this is where it gets truly profound. Because this isn't just some random, morbid decoration, this is symbolism. Deep, intentional religious symbolism. The 4 giant pyramids are said to represent the 4 corners of the earth, or the mountain of heaven, a symbol of resurrection. The chandelier represents the light of God, a beacon of hope shining in the darkness, forged from mortality itself. The angels you see hovering throughout, made of skulls with crossed bones, represent the soul's journey to divine judgment. Everything here means something. Everything is intentional. František Rindt wasn't just organizing bones. He was creating theology in calcium. He was delivering a 3-dimensional sermon about mortality, resurrection, and the fundamental unity of all Christians, both living and deceased, before God. But here, asks the question that no one can seem to answer: what happened to František Rindt after he completed this monumental work? We know his birth date, January 26, 1835, But his date of passing? It's listed simply as a question mark. He finished his work at the ossuary in 1870. He was 35 years old. And then he just vanishes from all historical records. There's no record of his passing. No grave, no mention of what became of the man who spent years surrounded by 40,000 skeletons. Some people believe he withdrew from society, unable to readjust to normal life. Others suggest he joined a monastery and took a vow of silence. And then there are the whispers, the local legends that say he never truly left the ossuary at all. Because even today, workers at the site report something unusual. Occasionally, when they are cleaning the bones late at night, they get the distinct feeling of being watched. They'll catch a glimpse of a figure in old 19th century clothing, standing silently in the shadows, just observing their work. When they try to look directly at it, it vanishes. Could it be František Rint, still guarding his masterpiece? Still unable to leave the very work that consumed his life? Or is it something else entirely? The mystery remains as silent and profound as the bone church itself. Now let's talk about the secrets hidden in those bones. Because this place holds mysteries that most visitors never discover. Look closely at the remains in the display cases. Some have marks, precise marks. Medieval weapons, swords, maces, arrows. These aren't just plague victims, these are soldiers. People who experienced violent ends during the Hussite Wars. You can see the exact wound that ended their lives, preserved in calcium for 6 centuries. One skull has a perfectly circular mark in the temple, mace strike. The end would have been instant. Another shows a slash across the crown, sword blow. Probably didn't end immediately. Imagine those final moments. These bones tell stories, violent, historical stories. And there's something else. Something more mysterious. In 1970, exactly 100 years after Rint finished his work, Czech filmmaker Jan Svankmajer made a documentary about the ossuary, 10 minutes long. Rapid cuts between skeletal images, overlaid with a tour guide's calm, neutral narration. But the communist authorities restricted it. They said it was problematic. They replaced the soundtrack with jazz music. Why? What did they see in those images that concerned them? Some say Svankmajer captured something. In one frame, visible for just a fraction of a second, there appears to be an image among the bones. An image that wasn't part of the arrangements. An image that seems to be ... watching. The original film has been restored since the Velvet Revolution. But that frame? It's still there, still visible. But the biggest mystery of all is this. We don't actually know who these people are. 40,000 to 70,000 human beings. And we know almost nothing about them. No names, no stories. No records of who they were, how they lived, what they loved. All we know is they wanted to be buried in holy ground. They were deeply religious. They believed in the Last Judgment. They hoped for resurrection. And now their art, anonymous, eternal, transformed into a message about mortality that has outlived their own identities. Is that tragedy? Or is that exactly what they would have wanted? The Sedlec Ossuary has survived events that should have destroyed it completely. During the Hussite Wars in 1421, Hussites attacked and burned the monastery. The upper church was severely damaged, but the ossuary, underground, protected, the bones survived. During the communist era, religious sites across Czechoslovakia were closed, demolished, or converted to secular use. But somehow, the ossuary remained accessible. Even communist authorities couldn't bring themselves to destroy it. In 2002, structural engineers discovered something concerning. The building had shifted from its vertical axis by nearly half a meter. The church was literally leaning at risk of collapse. If it had fallen, 40,000 skeletons would have been scattered, destroyed, mixed into rubble. But restoration began just in time. The building was stabilized. The bones were preserved. Coincidence or something else? And there's the issue of humidity. Being underground, the ossuary experiences extreme dampness. Moisture that should be deteriorating the bones, destroying the arrangements, turning everything to dust. But it doesn't. The bones remain preserved, as if something is protecting them. Workers say the temperature in the ossuary is always exactly the same, no matter the season. No matter the weather outside, always the same cool temperature. That's not natural. Buildings don't work that way. So what's maintaining it that way? Today, the Sedlec Ossuary attracts over 200,000 visitors every year. It's one of the most visited sites in the entire Czech Republic. But here's something they don't tell you. It's still a functioning Roman Catholic church. Masses are still celebrated in the upper chapel, which means this is not a museum. This is not a tourist attraction designed for entertainment. This is a sacred space, where worship happens, where prayers are said, where the living commune with God. Literally standing among the deceased. In 2014, restoration work began. It's still ongoing, because preserving 40,000 skeletons isn't easy. Every single bone has to be individually cleaned. With a brush. One. By one. Can you imagine that work? The patience required. The reverence. But here's the beautiful part. This isn't disrespectful. This is maintenance, care, honoring those who have passed by keeping them presentable. Because that's what this place is ultimately about. Not shock value, not unusual fascination. It's about memento mori. Remember mortality. Not to fear it, but to respect it. To understand that passing unites everyone, rich and poor, soldier and monk, noble and peasant. In the end, we're all the same. We're all bones. We're all part of the same human story. And maybe we're all part of something beautiful. So after everything, after learning this complete story, let me ask you the question I posed at the beginning. Why? Why would anyone create this? The truth is both simple and profound. František Rint and the half-blind monk before him weren't desecrating those who passed. They were honoring them, giving them purpose beyond the grave. These 40,000 people didn't simply pass and disappear. They became a message, a sermon, a work of art that has touched millions of people across 150 years. They became eternal in a way they never could have been as simple buried remains. And maybe that's the greatest gift you can give those who have passed. Meaning, the Sedlec Ossuary isn't a church decorated with bones. It's a church built from bones. Built from the very people who wanted to rest in holy ground. They received their wish. They're in a holy place. And now they are the holy place. This isn't construction. This is transformation. This is spiritual alchemy of the highest order. And if you've stayed until here, thank you, sincerely. I know this was intense. I know some of you might be uncomfortable. But I hope you understand now why I had to share this story. If this narrative touched you, if it made you think about mortality in a new way, leave your like. Subscribe to the channel because next week I'll bring another church with secrets that challenge everything you believe. And share in the comments. Would you visit the Sedlec Ossuary? Could you stand in a room created from 40,000 human beings? Or does the idea unsettle you? Until the next story. Until the next church. Until we meet again in the shadows of the sacred. May you rest well.